Imagine like the spouse of a modern-day billionaire.
Right.
Someone who, supplies the vast fortune that funds a massive political career. She is totally known to the public. Her family lineage is famous. And then one day,
She just evaporates.
she just evaporates, yeah. No obituary, no internet footprint, no legal separation documents. I mean, no medical records. She just ceases to exist on paper, and the authorities never ask a single question.
It sounds impossible, right? So, like in a modern context.
Yeah.
But it actually represents one of the most effective methods of exerting power. Because when you control the documentation of reality, well, you control reality itself.
Welcome to this deep dive. I am so thrilled you were joining us today because we are unpacking a really fascinating stack of sources.
They've got historical documents, archaeological studies, and even some contemporary news reports.
Yeah, and they detail how the elite class of 19th century Puebla, Mexico pulled off these ultimate disappearing acts. Our mission today is to investigate a profound historical clash.
Right. The clash between the pristine official history written by the powerful and the oral tradition kept alive by the people.
So we're going to explore two main themes from the sources. First, the Archivos Prohibidos, or the Forbidden Archives. And second, Identidad Espectral, which means spectral identity. Okay, let's unpack this.
Because we aren't just looking at spooky folklore today.
No, not at all. We are looking at ghost stories that were actually engineered to function as highly accurate, secret criminal records.
Which is such a brilliant concept. But to understand why the everyday people of Puebla had to resort to, encoding their history into ghost stories in the first place, we have to look at the official paper trail.
Or the terrifying lack of one, really.
Exactly. Because the sources describe colonial and 19th century Puebla not as a standard city with a separate government and a wealthy class, but as a true republic of elites.
Meaning the families like the Harui Tamariz clan or the Furlong Malpica family, they didn't just influence the system, they were the system.
Or the entire system.
Wait, but if these families controlled the money, the land, and the courts, why go through the trouble of erasing someone from the archives entirely? Like, why not just fake a will or use the courts to legally take what they wanted?
Well, it really comes down to the complex nature of how wealth was held back then and their obsession with maintaining a pristine public legacy. The sources point to this concept called the Laguna Archivistica.
The archival void.
Right, the archival void. The archives weren't just destroyed in a flood or a fire or something. They were actively and meticulously sanitized.
Which brings us to the specific case that anchors all of this research. Antonio de Haro y Tamariz and his wife, Dolores Obando.
Yes. Antonio is this absolute political titan. He's the head of the Conservative Party, Minister of Finance. I mean, his life is documented down to the literal day.
Yeah, the sources mention we even have the actual receipts for the Velga and damask curtains in his luxurious home.
The Casa de los Cañones.
Right, the Casa de los Cañones. But his wife, Dolores, who came from this incredibly wealthy lineage and brought immense capital into the marriage, she completely vanishes after they are wed.
Gone.
Just gone. No death certificate, no record of her final years, nothing at all.
And to understand why, you have to consider the mechanics of wealth at that time. Dolores controlled these ancestral estates known as mayorazgos.
Okay, and what exactly does that mean in this context?
So these were entailed estates. That means the property and the wealth were legally bound together.
Oh, so they couldn't just be split up.
Exactly. They couldn't be divided, sold off piecemeal, or even easily transferred in a divorce. The wealth was permanently tied to the bloodline and to the specific person.
I see. So for Antonio to consume that wealth to fund his, antagonistic political adventures, he couldn't just separate from her.
Right. He had to control the asset entirely without her interference, and crucially, without leaving a paper trail of his financial extraction.
So it's essentially like a 19th century version of a corporate asset stripping scheme?
Oh, absolutely. That is a highly accurate way to frame it.
Right, like you acquire the entity, you drain it of all its capital, and then you just dissolve it so completely that there's no liability left over for the parent company.
Yes, and the physical mechanism of this erasure is just insidious. I mean, you don't need to burn down a library to create an archival void.
You just bribe the clerk.
Pretty much. When the clerks, the judges, and the notaries all owe their livelihoods to your family, you just ensure certain documents are never drafted in the first place.
Right.
You curate the intake of history. You instruct the clerk to look the other way, or, oops, a specific folio is conveniently misplaced before it's bound into the official record.
And I think the most astonishing part of the sources is what Antonio does after he strips her assets and erases her from the public record. He actually retires to Rome.
Oh, the rum trim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He retires to Rome and joins a Jesuit novitiate as a, quote, brother coadjutor. I'm really trying to wrap my head around the logistics of that. How does a married politician just decide to become a Jesuit monk?
Well, so a brother coadjutor isn't actually an ordained priest. It's a lay religious role within the Jesuit order.
Okay.
And it offered him this respectable, highly protected sanctuary for his final years. It was seen as an act of public extreme penance.
Wow. How convenient.
Very. But here's the catch. Canon law required that anyone entering the order be entirely free of marital bonds. You had to be a widower or have a very formal church-sanctioned separation.
Oh, I get it. So the fact that Dolores was already scrubbed from existence provided him the exact loophole he needed to enter the order.
Exactly. The archival void was weaponized to grant him immunity. He spent his final days totally protected by the church.
While the official archives were essentially forbidden from reflecting the truth of what he actually did to his wife.
Right. The archives were literally forbidden from telling the truth.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because you can't just erase a prominent human being whose family money built the city. I mean, the servants know.
The laborers know.
Exactly. The community definitely notices when a woman like Dolores is suddenly just gone. So since the official paper trail was meticulously wiped clean, the truth had to migrate somewhere the elite couldn't reach.
It moved into the minds of the people. It mutated into folklore.
Right. And this is where the concept of identidad spectral, or spectral identity, emerges in the sources. The people of Puebla essentially synthesized the truth into something the authorities couldn't censor.
Yes, they created the legend of the Dama de Blanco, the woman in white. And in the most enduring versions of this folklore, the ghost is given a very specific name.
Agustina de Haro y Tamariz.
Which is fascinating, because if you look at the official birth records, Agustina de Haro y Tamariz doesn't exist.
It's a totally fabricated name.
It is fabricated, yeah, but it's deeply intentional. The name Agustina points directly to the patriarch of her family, Agustin de Ovando.
Oh, so it anchors the victim to her original powerful lineage.
Exactly. And then de Haro y Tamariz are the last names of the husband who ruined her. So by fusing these names together, the working class created a permanent oral indictment.
Wow. So they essentially weaponized her own lineage against the men who erased her. It's an oral denunciation hidden in plain sight.
It really is a masterstroke of popular memory. You can bribe a clerk to lose a death certificate, but you can't arrest a ghost story.
You really can't. The folklore basically becomes the archive of the streets. Which brings us to the legend of the Puente de Ovando, the Ovando Bridge.
Oh, this is a prime example from the sources.
Yeah, it highlights exactly how these stories preserve the memory of, well, economic and social mutilation. The legend of the bridge is incredibly layered.
It tells the story of a young Ovando woman who falls in love with a man of lower status. And the patriarch, Agustin de Ovando, supposedly tells her, "I would rather see you dead than begging for alms on a bridge."
Such a cruel irony there. And the legend says the young woman and her lover are confronted in her bedroom by her brother, who is armed with a pistol. He shoots, the sister jumps in front of the bullet, and dies.
And the brother faces zero consequences.
Right, because the elite authorities declared a crime of honor.
Which perfectly mirrors the systemic reality we were just discussing.
Yeah.
The authorities and the elite families are the exact same entity. They protect their own assets and reputation above the actual law.
So the story continues with the grief-stricken father becoming a drunk. And one rainy night, he's crossing his own bridge and he sees a woman in white begging for a coin. He yells at her. She looks up, and it's his murdered daughter.
Right.
She tells him she is cursed to beg for alms on this bridge and from all his descendants until the end of time because she was killed by her own family. And the father is so terrified he actually falls into the river and drowns.
A really heavy story.
It really is. But I'm trying to wrap my head around the specifics of this legend. So is this ghost begging for a coin just a classic spooky trope to scare people walking home at night? Or is the spectral identity doing something more deliberate with that specific demand?
What's fascinating here is that it's entirely deliberate. The ghost asking for a coin is the physical manifestation of a silenced woman whose actual vast fortune was stolen from her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she isn't just a monster. She's the echo of a woman who was economically mutilated by her husband. The patriarch's arrogant, quote, first dead then begging, is fulfilled in the darkest way possible.
Because she was left destitute, not by marrying a poor man, but by marrying Antonio de Haro, an elite who completely drained her wealth.
Exactly. These legends act as the secret dossiers of the people. They preserve the truth about aristocrats who viewed the women in their families as disposable financial assets.
It's one thing to say a ghost is a metaphor for a silenced woman. I mean, it's a really powerful idea. But it is entirely different when you literally rip up the floorboards of the exact building she supposedly haunts and find actual physical evidence of that silencing.
Right.
The sources take us from spectral folklore to undeniable proof hidden in the foundations.
And we are talking about the Antico Hospital de San Roque. For centuries, this building operated as a hospital and an asylum linked directly to the elite of Puebla.
It is also the specific location where rumors place the woman in white wandering the halls, right?
Yes. Historically, there were always whispers that the wealthy locked their inconvenient family members inside San Roque to legally seize their wealth.
And then recently, a massive archaeological salvage project went into San Roque, and the terminology the archaeologists used in their official reports is just striking. They referred to their findings as dolorosas, meaning painful stories.
It's a grim, perhaps unintentional nod to Dolores Ovando. And the findings shattered any illusion that San Roque was purely a place of healing, because archaeologists found at least 9 complete human skeletons, along with numerous scattered remains.
But this was not a sanctioned cemetery.
No, not at all. These individuals were not given standard burials. There were no coffins, no grave goods, no formal rites. The bodies were found buried directly underneath the courtyard floors.
Stuffed behind stone staircases.
Yeah, and wedged into the structural foundations of the columns.
So they were essentially treated as architectural filler, tossed into the masonry.
Exactly. And the trauma on the bones tells a horrific story. One male skeleton had 2 massive lesions on the frontal bone, indicating a highly violent death.
Oh my God.
But the most harrowing discovery, the one that really embodies the term dolorosas, involved the remains of women. The archaeologists uncovered female skeletons where the rib cages still contained the tiny, fragile bones of fetuses in various stages of gestation.
So pregnant women, buried without a name, shoved under the floorboards of a hospital run by the elite. That is incredibly dark.
It is the physical manifestation of the Forbidden Archive. The elite utilized the hospital's lack of oversight to disappear people who threatened their financial or social standing.
Wow.
San Roque was essentially the physical vault for forced abortions, violent murders, and the systematic erasure of women. The building itself was an accomplice to the silencing.
Which proves that the rumors of the woman in white, all those stories the working class whispered for generations, were entirely factual.
The people pouring the concrete and sweeping the halls knew what was happening, even if the official ink and paper said otherwise.
Now, it would be comforting to look back at the 19th century and view this as just a dark chapter of the past. But the sources draw a direct, undeniable line from this historical erasure to the modern era.
Unfortunately, yes. The mechanics of power in Puebla, how the elite protect their own and sanitize their legacy, haven't really changed.
Right. Let's look at the year 2019.
So, the Antico Hospital de San Roque, despite its profound historical and archaeological significance, was essentially abandoned by the state. And the government handed the 16th century building over to a private individual in a 30-year comodato.
To be turned into a, quote, wax and technology museum, which just begs the question, why would a government just hand over a priceless 16th century heritage site for free to a private entity?
Well, it is a common tactic to privatize public heritage. It allows the state to shed the immense financial burden of maintaining a historical structure while still claiming they are promoting cultural development.
But in this case, almost immediately after the comodato was granted, the building was looted.
Heavily looted.
And not just casually vandalized. Thieves systematically dismantled and stole the ancient, incredibly valuable 16th century stone fountain from the main courtyard. I mean, it was a massive coordinated extraction of cultural wealth.
And obviously, local activists and historians were outraged. They mobilized, demanded action, and eventually the state government and the prosecutor's office announced a victory.
Right. They found the stolen fountain pieces hidden away in a mechanic shop, and they arrested the culprits.
So on the surface, it looks like the system working. The stolen heritage is recovered.
But then the state authorities hold a press conference. The governor stands at the podium and explicitly refuses to name the perpetrators. He literally states, "I am not going to reveal who the detainees are."
Yeah.
What is the legal justification for a governor hiding the names of people who dismantled a 16th century monument?
There really is no sound legal justification, other than loosely invoking privacy rights to protect what the source is called the notability.
The notability.
Right. The modern system operates on the exact same frequency as the 19th century system. The authorities protect the wealthy or the politically connected from public ruin.
So by hiding the names, the government basically cleans the slate for the perpetrators, ensuring their public legacy remains totally untouched.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is what the research identifies as the estrategia de la fachada.
The strategy of the facade.
Yes. It's the ultimate tool of the archival void. The system works by maintaining a beautiful, majestic exterior, the facade, of buildings like San Roque or Antonio de Haro's Casa de los Cañones.
They preserve the architecture, but they completely hollow out the inside.
Right. They erase the crimes committed within, destroy the original identity, and then present a clean, rehabilitated face to the public.
So they recover the stones of the stolen fountain. They announce they are rescuing the building for a museum, but they maintain absolute silence on who actually committed the crime.
They save the architecture, but they erase the victims.
Whether it's the name of a modern looter being protected by the governor or the memory of Dolores Ovando locked away and forgotten by her husband, the cycle of power operates the exact same way. They control the narrative by controlling the archive.
Because when the powerful own the ink and the paper, they dictate the official reality. But the oral tradition, that spectral identity, proves that memory cannot be entirely contained. The powerless use the shadows and the stories to maintain a parallel archive.
We started this deep dive looking at what seemed like a simple ghost story about a woman in white begging for coins on an old stone bridge. But peeling back the layers of these sources revealed the profound mechanics of systemic corruption.
It really did.
We saw how the elite orchestrated the absolute erasure of women like Dolores to protect their wealth, and how the working class used folklore as a tactical tool to keep the truth alive. I mean, the bones under San Roque proved that the ghosts were the only ones telling the truth.
Which completely reframes how we should listen to local myths. They aren't just superstitions, they are often the only surviving record of the voiceless.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this right now? I'll leave you with a lingering thought to explore on your own. Think about your own hometown. Think about the local urban legends, the haunted houses on the edge of town, the bridge myths you were warned about as a kid. What if the ghosts you were warned about aren't supernatural at all? What if they are actually the coded, forbidden archives of real historical victims whose true stories the powerful successfully managed to erase from your local library? It really makes you wonder what's buried beneath the floorboards of the buildings you walk past every day. Until next time.